It's an unusual session. I'm doing this basically in very unusual circumstances of quarantine that's happening. We all find ourselves in this challenging times in quite unusual circumstances. So this session is basically going online without anybody present. I'll try to interact with you as much as I can if I see your comments. And it's basically my attempt to address the situation of what's happening from a Jewish perspective without me necessarily having all the right answers. I would just try to think out loud with you, and hopefully we'll come to some sort of an understanding tonight at how are we to react to this unprecedented situation of coronavirus pandemic that's happening around the world. And I mean the Jewish people. Of course, Judaism is here to teach us and give us some practical advice in all sorts of situations in life. And it's certainly very valuable to turn to our tradition, to turn to our sources, to try to find the answers to all potential questions that are not potential, but real questions. Here's the real question that is really challenging us. Hello to all those who just joined us. So our session tonight, Jewish approach to coronavirus. And what I try to accomplish tonight is the following. I try to address the following issues and the following questions. Number one, what is going on? That's the question that everybody's having right now. And I'm certainly not a prophet. I'm certainly not claiming to have clear understanding of what's going on, but I'll try to give you some picture of what's happening. And the next, of course, is how do we respond? After we know what's happening, the next question is how do we respond to this current crisis? And the third one, which is probably the most interesting one and the most important one at the end of the day, is what's the Jewish take on this? And what are we supposed to do as Jews in this situation? So let's start, I guess, with a very brief description of what's happening. There's a website that I'm checking occasionally in terms of seeing what's happening around the world. It gives statistics of cases, and currently I checked it just now. I'm going to check again. Let's see, maybe last time I checked was 30 minutes ago. It stands at the moment at, the website is worldometers.info. I will post the link if you're interested. I will post a link to the website. So currently it says there's 9,269 cases worldwide with 151 deaths around the world. Is that, no, that must be in America. 1 second. No, that's of course United States. That's United States. And around the world it was something like 1,800 cases. Yesterday, 194,000. 218,000 cases today. Yesterday I checked 194,000 cases with 8,944 deaths. United States approaching 9,300 as we see, with 151 deaths. And we live in New York. New York State has the highest number right now in America. I'm checking, it says total cases 3,038 total cases in New York State. That's a lot, of course, and certainly a reason to not to panic. We need not to panic. That's very important. We need to be alert of what's happening. We need to know the data. We need to receive objective information, facts, and with a gloomy picture around the world, with countries closing, with all those measures being taken around the world, many people feel very worried about what's happening. And it's not just, of course, it's not just, hello to those who are joining us right now, it's not just the disease itself that's spreading so fast. As of today, 1,800 cases worldwide. Yesterday, 194,000. That's significant spread. You see what's happening in America. It's 9,000, almost 9,300 cases with almost 2,900 new cases. That's really bothering. That's, of course, makes us feel worried. At the same time, I think it's very, very important, hello to those who are joining us, not to panic. We're going to talk about it in a moment. In Israel, there's 433 cases with 96 new cases. You know, Israel is basically announcing very, very strict measures. I'm sure you're aware of what's happening around the world, what's happening in Italy, what's happening in European countries, what's happening in Israel. It all started, as you know, in China. It spread first to Asian countries and then eventually Iran, Italy, European countries, European Union has been hit in a very bad way, as you're all aware. Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, all the countries around the world are now having cases, with exception of a few African countries. It's really a pandemic. Pandemic being declared this week by World Health Association organization, WHO, announced this is a pandemic, which means it's a disease that's being spread worldwide and is of real danger to the whole world. Now, before we get to the Jewish approach on the situation, I'd like to address some of the popular approaches these days, which I think are very dangerous and should never be taken, not only in this case, but in general. And forget about the Jewish approach. They just not doing us any good in general, in any situation. Number one, all sorts of conspiracy theories. And usually you see conspiracy theories are around when we are facing all sorts of dangers, when we're facing all sorts of situations that creating uncertainty, creating panic. The problem with all the measures the governments are taking, they're not telling us how long is this whole going to go. Is this whole situation going to happen? And nobody knows. The governments themselves don't really know. They're shutting down schools and they don't tell us when they're going to reopen, right? So of course that creates a lot of uncertainty. And here we go. We have all those conspiracy theories literally, you know, spreading around on mushrooms in all sorts of ways and directions. I keep hearing all sorts of weird things, and they spread around with internet these days, with access to information being almost unlimited. It's really easy to spread all those theories, and that's very unfortunate, of course. But many people believe in them, and they keep spreading them. You know, you share the post, people hear about it, more likes, and more basically disinformation that is making it much worse for everybody. People are being scared enough already of what's happening. So some say, well, Chinese people did it on purpose. It doesn't make much sense, does it? Well, they started this in China, and many people died there in their country. Unless you say the communists don't care about their population. But in general, folks, I don't believe in conspiracy theories. If some of you do me a favor, think twice or thrice or many, many more times before you repost something, any sort of a conspiracy theory. And I hear all sorts of very awkward conspiracy theories today. Some people who are against vaccination, for instance, are saying, you know, it's all done in order, so just today, you wouldn't believe it, it's all done in order to force us into vaccination. So we all vaccinate, and, and that's how it's been done. So the problem with all these conspiracy theories, of course, is that somehow there's an underlying belief that somebody is there in control of the situation. And I don't think, if you really carefully look at what's happening around the world, the governments have been perplexed, and health authorities are being really running out of all available ways to respond adequately. Italy has a very good health system. It's been stretched to a point where they don't have enough doctors. Many doctors got sick. And countries that were really running in a very normal way, European countries, They're experiencing shortage. We're all aware of what's happening here in America as well. You can go to Costco today, and you're not going to see. It's like in the back in the USSR in those days. We all used to make fun of those things, thinking about how it was back in the old country in the 80s, where you would have empty shelves and you wouldn't be able to get toilet paper. Hey, well, here we go today in the wealthiest countries around the world, in the wealthiest cities around the world. I see pictures from all over London, UK, Germany, Australia, here in America, all around the world. People are staying in long lines and on queues trying to get their basic essentials. That's not funny. But part of it, of course, has to do with the fact that we overreact, and has to do with the fact that we panic because we don't know what's happening. And our governments are not telling us what's happening to a large extent because they themselves don't seem to know what's happening. They don't seem to be 100% clear on how to react to this pandemic. It's a pretty new situation. And of course, there were diseases in the past. But if you take a look at the exponential spread of what's happening here, an exponential curve of this particular one, that of course is a serious cause to not to panic, but to think about it in very serious terms. So conspiracy theories, that's a big, big no. And the best thing you can do is to make sure that those who spread those conspiracy theories, they stop at you. You don't continue that. You don't go ahead with those. And you'll be surprised with some of those conspiracy theories. Just today, somebody posted in Israel, Victor Lieberman, a person who, of course, shocked us these elections, that he was always considered to be a right-wing politician, and he decided to go and basically recommend Benny Gantz to be the prime minister we know they don't have a Jewish majority, they don't have the Zionist majority, but with the backing of the Arab delegates, with the backing of, and again, I'm not a racist, I have nothing against Arabs, but some of these Arab delegates were openly supporting terrorists, were openly saying that these terrorists were freedom fighters, and they had no problem with them killing Jews, and they refused to recognize the symbols of the Jewish state, and they basically refuse to recognize even the idea of a Jewish state. So Victor Lieberman is running with these guys, with these folks. Who could think of such a thing, right? Absolute impossibility. And all those people who voted for him probably, I don't know what they think these days. Honestly, I think it's a tremendous betrayal that happened. But my point right now is about conspiracy theories. So here we go. Victor Lieberman today posts only on his Russian Facebook account, not on his Hebrew Facebook account, because probably his Hebrew readers wouldn't buy that, but apparently he thinks his Russian readers would. He's posting literally a conspiracy theory saying that the whole thing happened because Bibi wants to control the situation, and that's why they locked the country up. There's no need to do that. The doctors and the scientists apparently, I don't know where he got those doctors, where he got those scientists, because Israel is taking the exact same measures they take all around the world. They take in Europe, they start taking here in the United States, if a little bit late, but they did, thank God. And somehow Bibi Netanyahu is the address. He's the one to be blamed for the current situation in the country. Now, of course, you're going to come across many of these theories because, folks, we are in it for quite some time. Let's be realistic. It started slow down in China, and it took them a few months. And Chinese government introduced basically almost a total lockdown to the province where it started, right? And I don't think we in democratic countries can actually afford such a thing. It's also tremendously damaging to our economy, so we're not going to do that. It took them about 3 months. We're just starting here in America. If you take a look at the raise of the number of the cases, we're certainly hitting that exponential growth, and we're not hitting the top yet, maybe in another week or two, which means we are in here for quite some time. So hold your breath. Practice different lifestyle. We all need to get ready to a very, very different world. I'm not saying it's happening forever. Of course, we got to get out of it at some point, and we got to make a big, big l'chaim finally when we're all out of our little shelters. But right now, we're in it for quite some time, and we need to be ready. We need to be ready mentally. We need to be ready emotionally. We need to be ready physically. And we need to do everything necessary to make sure that we are not part of the problem, but we are part of the solution. And that, I think, is very, very important to see how are we going to be part of the solution and not being part of the problem. So number one, a big no to conspiracy theories. Try to stop it wherever you can, because that's only seeding panic and not doing any good to anybody. Number two, and here I come as a rabbi and a religious leader who would say a big no to all those people who pretend in any religion, in any spiritual tradition, to be the big prophets. And today you have all those videos already. Some people saying that they know exactly why it happened and what sin is it coming as a punishment to. And they predict all sorts of other things that's going to happen, apparently according to their understanding of some prophecies of the past or some other things. Ladies and gentlemen, we officially in Judaism have prophecy sealed around the time of the destruction of the first temple. That's, if I'm not mistaken, at least 2,500 years ago, right? 2,500 years ago. I'm just waving to everybody, saying hello, all those who joined us here live. 2,500 years ago, we had our last prophets. So whoever today claims that he knows why this is happening exactly, and he thinks that he can be advocate for HaKadosh Baruch, for God, and he thinks that he knows how to read the prophecies and how they relate exactly to the events of today, at best, I think it's very, very irresponsible, because he should know better. This particular rabbi or mufti or a church leader or whoever that is, I don't care. He should certainly know better, because we don't have prophets for 2,500 years already. And there will be, hopefully, a restoration of prophecy in the Messianic times, but we will know and we shall see. But it's not there right now. And so therefore, it's very dangerous, actually, to rely on the messages of people who think that they know irrationally, somehow irrationally know of what happened and why it is happening right now. Now, of course, it's very appealing to listen to somebody who's going to tell you exactly 1, 2, 3, very simple. This is the prophecy, that's how it's being fulfilled right now, that's what's going on, that's what's happening, and I know the answer. But if we just use our common sense, and if we just use our understanding of our very own tradition, we shall know better. And it's extremely irresponsible and manipulative on behalf of those leaders to suggest that they know the answer and they know exactly how it happened and they know exactly the spiritual reason why it happened, and to suggest that level of clarity. We today don't really have it. We need to rely on our common sense. We need to rely on our understanding of our sources, which we'll try to do later tonight. I'll try to present to you some sort of a coherent Jewish approach to this. It's not going to be on a level of just 1, 2, 3. This is why it happened. This is what's going on. And this is how we're going to get out of it. No, I'm certainly the wrong guy to do this. I am not on that level. And to be honest, I don't think anybody is on this level today. Okay? So if you expect 100% level of clarity today after listening to this, you can switch off right now. I'm not giving this to you. I'm not there. Okay? However, and I think that's very, very important, we pointed out at 2 things that are certainly wrong. That's conspiracy theories, a big no, and that's all sorts of prophecies, pseudo-prophecies, we should say, claiming that they also know exactly the reason why it happened and what's going to happen tomorrow, the year after, tomorrow, and so on and so forth. They both fall, as far as I'm concerned, in the same category of basically total nonsense that should be absolutely ignored and discouraged on all levels. That's number 1. Finally, after we get to dismiss all those things. Another thing I think we should dismiss, and that's dismissed kind of not because it's wrong, we can understand the psychological need of that, but because it's not getting us anywhere in any good place. Any sort of reaction that is just spreading panic and basically shutting down our common sense and not allowing us to think rationally. So we need to relate to the information we receive from all possible sources with basic caution and with basic desire to question the sources and to understand where this information is coming from. In our age where we have unlimited access to information, it's critically important to use our mind, to use our seichel, to use our brain, right, in the right direction to question the validity of information. Of course, if you have sources coming from the governments, coming from health officials, coming from reputable sources, you basically probably should rely on those sources and treat them seriously. But there's a lot of disinformation and there's a lot of all sorts of different theories that have been spread around by basically irresponsible people. And that creates panic, my friends. The worst enemy of us today is panic. We should try to avoid panic as much as we can. Breathe calmly and find the inner strength to deal with the situation in the best way possible. So what is the Jewish answer to this? Again, as I said, I'm not going to give you a prophetic answer because I'm not a prophet. I'm not going to give you the answer that is like 1, 2, 3, clear. No, none of that stuff. However, I think if we reflect upon our sources, we really look into what Judaism has to offer us. We have certain halachic guidelines. We have certain understanding of what are the key values that Judaism believes in. And these values are being tested in such times of distress and such times of worry and times like today. And at the same time, I think we need to only strengthen our commitment to our values because we've been around for a very long time. We've seen so many different issues throughout our history on all sorts of levels. I'm not even talking about Holocaust. I'm not even talking about the huge disasters that we faced throughout our history. Take a look at what's happening with the Jewish people around the world. Think about anti-Semitism. Think about threats that we are facing on a regular basis. They are common. So certainly we have developed, I think as a civilization, as a nation, we've developed a tremendous strength, tremendous stamina, tremendous ability to keep on going. We just need to be rooted in our sources, in our tradition, and we need to understand rationally, using our common sense, what is the best approach right now and what can we learn from our rabbis, from our sages who gave us knowledge throughout the generations. And please God, we will live through these difficult times and we shall be healthy and everything will be good with us, please God. So I just want to share with you one source which I think is particularly relevant, not only to this specific instance of a pandemic of coronavirus, but in all situations in life, because this is one of those sources in Judaism that is basically telling us, giving us the guidelines of what is the most important thing in the world. What are the most important Jewish values? What are the most important ways of living life in a Jewish way? So I'm looking at Pirkei Avot, of course, as a source of wisdom. Pirkei Avot is the tractate of the Babylonian Talmud that, as opposed to any other tractate, doesn't really have any halachic material, any legal material, but it has what we call ethics. It has the big picture of Judaism. It's teaching us values. It's teaching us how to live our life. And we have two Mishnayot in the first parak, in the first chapter of the tractate. We have two Mishnayot, two teachings that are directly addressing the question of what are the pillars of the world? What are the most important values we should have as Jews? And both of these Mishnayot are basically saying the same thing. Al shlosha dvarim ha'olam omed. The world stands on three things. Now, two different sets of three things have been given. The first one, which is the most famous one, of course, and very often quoted, is the Mishnah that's at the beginning of the parak, beginning of the chapter, that's saying, Al shlosha dvarim ha'olam omed, the world stands on three things, ala Torah, on the Torah study, ala avodah, on service of God, ve'al gmilut chasadim, and also on acts of loving kindness. However, there's another source that's not as famous and not as well known, and that's at the very end of the first parak. And over there, another set of three has been given, and that's emet, truth, mishpat. Mishpat is usually translated as judgment, or we can translate it as justice as well. And the final one is shalom. Shalom, of course, is peace. So, first of all, the question is, what's the difference and what's the distinction between the first set and the second set? And I'm not going to address this only briefly, because that's not our topic, but I want to deal primarily with the second set. And the first set is really, so to speak, is telling us how we are to live our life following the guidelines of Judaism. And it's about a 3D world. There's three ways to commit in Judaism. One is, I call it vertical, that's between me and God. That's prayer, service of God. The other one is horizontal, that's between me and fellow Jews or fellow humans. That's the acts of loving kindness, me being a giver, not being so much a taker, but being a giver. And the third one is addressing my inner world, and that's the way to approach the Torah, because essentially Torah study is trying to understand who I am, truly, in a spiritual sense. So that's the first set of three, that these are the three pillars of the world: Torah, Torah study, service of God, and loving kindness. That's the 3D world in which we live in. How are we going to maintain this world? How are we going to maintain this world? Maybe not necessarily on purely religious terms, but on terms accessible to humanity, to the whole world. I think here we're talking about something that's important for us as a society. And that's the second set. So three things we need to have for our societies to be successful, for our world to go in a direction of progress, not just material progress, but spiritual progress. We need these three. And what are these three? Emet, truth. Mishpat, a system of justice, social justice. Judgment that is based on equality. That's mishpat. And finally, the last one is shalom. Shalom is always the last one. If you take a look at all of our prayers, you take a look at grace after meals, Birkat Hamazon, it ends with the word shalom. You take a look at the Kaddish, the prayer that we say regularly in the shul. Again, it's shalom is at the end. Shmona Esrei, the most important prayer we have during the day, shalom is the last bracha, the last blessing. So shalom, it's not a coincidence, it's always the last one. So here are the three things, three areas, I think, in which we need to be focused. And that's how I understand it. And I'm going to give you my perspective and my understanding on how these three would apply in this current situation. So first of all, we're talking about truth, emet, emes. Emes, of course, truth is a very important Jewish value. Here we'll look at it from social perspective. Right now we are facing a pandemic. Everybody who's trying to tell you it's all nonsense, it's all baloney, it's got to be gone tomorrow, that is basically an attempt to stay away from truth. That's an attempt to pretend that, well, I'm safe, I don't care about what's happening around me. Well, that's not exactly what it is. At the end of the day, we're all in the same boat. And it is happening. It is a pandemic. Let's call the baby by its name. We need to be careful and we need to be serious about it. At the same time, I'd like to mention another thing here, which unfortunately I think we have an issue in some of our religious communities till today. Even though it's very clear in Judaism, we need to follow doctors. We need to follow medical advice. It's not just recommended, but it's absolutely necessary from Jewish and halachic perspective. And there were numerous Piskei Din, there were numerous rabbinical responses these days here in America that clearly underline this issue and saying it's basically very, very well known in Judaism. Pikuach nefesh, protecting human life, is overriding any other considerations. And that's how most of the synagogues are closed, very unfortunately. But Shtibel, for instance, here in Manhattan Beach is closed as well. And our regular minyanim have been affected. Our Torah studying groups has been affected. Many things have been affected. It's all true. However, the reason these measures have been taken is because really we have a serious concern for well-being and health of our congregants, of our people. And it's a right way to approach it. It's a serious and responsible way to approach it. It's to listen to the guidance of the health officials, to listen and follow medical advice, and to protect us, ourselves, our friends, our families, and our communities. So that's about emet, that's about truth. At the same time, we need to make sure to stay away from all sorts of disinformation that's been spread around and all sorts of irresponsible sources that are being quoted by people and spread from mass media today that are just increasing panic. We need to stay away from that panic as much as we can. So that as far as the first one is concerned. The second one, we said mishpat, that's not only a system of judgment that's based on equality. We see in the Torah that a slave has been given rights, the same rights as a regular Jew for the first time probably in human history. The idea of equality before the law is a Jewish idea, it's a biblical idea. So here we're talking about a little bit different aspect of what we call today justice, seeking justice. We see it all the way in the Torah, we see it in the prophets, we see it everywhere in the Tanakh, and of course throughout the Jewish literature. It's one of the most important Jewish values. I think here, when we talk about seeking justice, we are talking about our human and Jewish responsibility, not just to think about ourselves, but to think about each other. And mishpat is always coming together with tzedakah from the word tzedek. The idea of both is basically to seek ways how to contribute to the community, how to be a blessing in these challenging times. How is it possible for us to be a blessing to our families, to our communities? On the individual level, we obviously cannot stop this pandemic, but we can be part of the solution instead of being part of a problem. So we can give it a little bit of a thinking. Each of us can pause for a second and think, what are the ways I can contribute to make the situation better? Emotionally, physically, spiritually, on all levels. And I'll give you a hint, I think we should all start from ourselves. We should all start from ourselves. Before we can affect others in a good way, we should, first of all, stop panicking and, build enough strength and stamina to face the situation in a best way possible, to be a blessing, to be a bracha to ourselves, to people around us, to our communities. I would also say, if we know, we should be good neighbors. If we know people around us suffering of all sorts of diseases, who are incapable right now to go out and do shopping, we probably should try our best to help them as much as we can. We could possibly use this difficult situation, challenging situation in a good way by thinking in terms of, our regular life. We don't notice so many people around us. We don't notice problems of the world. We only care about our little problems. We only care about our private lives. Right now, we're all in the same boat. All of a sudden we understand that the big issues of the world are very real for us. They can affect us. These are issues of life and death, literally. So they affect us today. They're going to affect us tomorrow. The choices we make, how responsible are they? How good are they? How much are we the blessing for our communities? Or, Rahman al-Islam, the opposite. And that's as far as justice is concerned. And finally, I think the most important one, of course, is bringing peace. Shalom. Shalom is probably the most important message that we should have today for ourselves, again, starting with ourselves first, and for people around us. We are being bombarded with this disquieting news, with news that are really creating a lot of worry and creating a lot of uncertainty around us. And for a good reason. We have all the reason in the world to worry. But at the same time, is it going to help us? I doubt it. It's not going to help us. So we need to stay as much rational as we can. And if it helps you to listen to more news, maybe you should, as long as you're informed about what's happening. But at some point, if you see it really getting into a very pessimistic mood, maybe shut down that radio, shut down that news station on a TV, and turn to something optimistic. Turn to something that's giving you the boost of good energy. Do a little meditation. Do a yoga session at home. You have all these available online. Thank God we live at the time with modern technology. We have Torah classes online. That's what we're doing right now, don't we? We have all sorts of spirituality classes online. We can use this time for self-improvement. We can use this time for self-reflection, and we can use this time for actually giving ourselves this great bracha, this great blessing of shalom, of peace and tranquility. And if we are being tested with this in such difficult times, to find that source of peace and tranquility in us, to be able to gain that stamina and strength, how much more so we will be able to carry on when all of that will be over. And please God, it will be over soon enough. So mass media, of course, needs to inform us of what's happening, and it's important. But it's our responsibility not to overreact, not to panic, to remain in a calm state of mind. You know, today, these days, again, it became very, very popular. You probably saw this famous pre-war slogan from the British Empire before World War II. It, I think, originated in 1939. And it became very, very popular recently in all different versions of it. But the original one probably is the best one. That's the famous one. Keep calm and carry on. I think that is the message for us today. Keep calm and carry on. That's the best advice we can really have for each other. As far as the idea of shalom in Judaism is concerned, it's not just, as many understand, you know, when the armies are having, or the two states are having some sort of a peace negotiations after the war, so there's an armistice agreement. There's much more to it than just an armistice agreement. There's much more to it than just suppressing all sources of trouble and war, be it an external war or an internal war. It's the idea and understanding that we are part of the world. Each of us is a part of something much greater, something much bigger. And we all affect each other. We all live in a world where we're interconnected and interdependent. Today, we all of a sudden feel our vulnerability. Being vulnerable is not easy. We are used to think of ourselves being really in a very good place. We all probably got used to so many things that we've been taken for granted. And all of a sudden today, when you have to stand in a long line for toilet paper, you can think for a second and appreciate the little things that you've been having all these years, and right now, potentially you're going to miss those things. There's no need to panic. Government is telling us there's plenty of supply. Thank God we live in capitalism, and you know, we're not going to run out of toilet paper, that's for sure. I can tell you this much, even though I'm not a prophet, as I'm saying, but we're not going to run out of toilet paper. And by the way, I'm not sure exactly how toilet paper has to do with this particular disease and how is it. I can understand food. People are concerned and scared that they're going to close and shut shops and all sorts of things. But what this has to do with the toilet paper, it's really beyond me. I don't know. But anyhow, no matter what, no matter where you're holding, I'm sure it's important to take all the measures for our physical well-being and to get enough toilet paper, food, whatever you need. But I think it's even more important to address our emotional and spiritual needs and to be the blessing of shalom to ourselves and to the world around us. If we manage in this difficult situation and we find that source of connection with God, because when we're vulnerable, that's usually when we are being asked to go deeper and to understand what is it in me, in my life, in my world that is going to make a difference for people around me. So I think we can take this crisis as an opportunity. Actually, in Judaism, much like in China, by the way, as well, this idea I took from the former chief rabbi Rebbe Lord Jonathan Sachs, who said in Chinese language it's the same word for crisis and opportunity. We have the same idea in Judaism. Mashber in Hebrew means crisis, but mashber is also used in the context of a lady giving birth. So something new is going to emerge. What is it going to emerge right now? We don't know. But we are being the greatest optimists of history. We the Jews are the greatest optimists of history. So how is the world going to look tomorrow after all of this is over? To a large extent, it's dependent on each and every one of us. We can use this time as time of opportunity. We can invest in ourselves. We can invest in our families. We can invest in our communities. We can be part of the solution and hopefully not being part of the problem. And that's the bracha that I'm going to give to each and every one of us. I also want to dedicate this class and this little Torah lesson to all those who seek recovery right now. May them all have refuah shlema, may all have speedy recovery, all the people in Israel, all the people in America, all the people around the Western world, anywhere in the world, including China, Iran, all the countries. You know, all these people created an image of God, they all need to come back to good health, please God. That should happen. And we should also, please God, be able to use this time as a time of great opportunity to make this world a better place, starting with ourselves, giving ourselves all the important nutrition, not talking about just physical nutrition, not talking just about the food that we're having, thank God, and we're going to have food, don't worry about it. But I'm talking about also, of course, spiritual food, and I'm talking about emotional food. Some of you posted some comments here. I'm not very good at looking at comments and talking at the same time, as I noticed. And I was waving to some of you. There were many who I didn't wave to. So here's one big wave to all of you guys, all of my friends, all of my virtual friends, all of my real friends. I want to give you one big hug over here. And I want to finish with a brief 1-minute meditation, if you allow. And let's do this in order to go through these difficult times and give ourselves a little bit of a boost of good energy, positive energy. And may this positive energy stay with us throughout the course of the day. And may we have a good sleep. And may we wake up tomorrow with that boost of good energy to do good things for ourselves, for people around us, and for the world. So I got to finish with this brief meditation, literally 1 minute. Let's calm down for a second. Take a deep breath. Breathing in, breathing out, we come down, and all our body is relaxed. Nice, pleasant wave of relaxation going from the head down to shoulders, to the chest, further down to stomach. A nice, pleasant wave of warmth and relaxation going to our feet. All the body is relaxed, our whole body is relaxed from top to bottom. There's nothing to worry about right now. We are here, we are in good hands. God is watching over us. Let's imagine for a second how this is happening. We know that God is constantly watching over us. So let's imagine this pleasant energy of love, of compassion. You can imagine a nice color. What's your favorite color? Warm color, orange. That's coming as warm and pleasant energy, coming and giving you very pleasant sensation. It's reaching your head, it's going to your shoulders, wrapping us with pleasant sensation of warmth. Nothing to worry about. We are in good hands. We are in the hands of Creator who loves us and watches over us. We have been covered with this good and pleasant energy. The whole body is filled with this light coming from above. We are filled with light to a point that now we can start giving the light over to people around us. We are becoming the source of light. We are giving this light around. We spread it around with compassion, with love, with peace, with harmony. Each of us is a source of light, and we all are being watched and cared by our Creator, our Father in heaven. Let's finish with thank you to each other and to Hashem, who's watching over us, for all the goodness that we fail to recognize on a daily basis, and hopefully we will be able to recognize more so as of today. Shalom to all of you, my brothers and sisters, and let's use this opportunity of coronavirus challenge to grow and to give each other more love and compassion, and hopefully this world will become a better place. Shalom, and thank you for watching.